Hey, Mystic Michaela spiritual family, welcome to Know Your Aura with Mystic Michaela. Today, we are talking about postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, and its links to spirituality. I'm going to give you my take, how I see the energy field reacting during pregnancy and afterwards, and what I believe the links to be between spirituality and pregnancy, which can also lead to postpartum depression. We're going to get in that deep. But first, hey, Scotty.
Hey, guys. Okay, so let's get right into it today.
Yeah.
You know, after you had Brianna, our oldest daughter, little Breezy, you suffered, and again, at that time, I didn't know what it was, but you suffered from postpartum depression. I don't know even if you knew that much about it at the time, right? Being our first child. And how would you know, I guess?
I had no idea what it was.
Right.
It started while I was pregnant.
Right.
Now, I didn't know that this is what's happening to me. I just slowly started descending into kind of a black pit in myself. I was getting really anxious. I was getting really obsessive. But then after I had her, it was like I was a passenger in my own body. I was having panic attacks. I felt dark. I had repetitive, intrusive thoughts. It was bad. It's still hard for me to talk about. I struggle talking about it. And I remember just feeling like I wasn't good at this. It was a totally foreign feeling. And like I said, I felt like I was completely out of control. And I remember, I don't even know if I've told you this, but I remember once I was in the bathtub. I'll never forget. And I was just sitting there and a feeling of calmness came over me. And this feeling was everyone would be better if you weren't around. Like your baby would be better. Your husband would be better. It would be much better if you weren't here. You need to not be here anymore. And what really it scares me, even looking back, is the sense of calmness it brought me.
Wow.
That was the only thought out of months and months and months of thoughts that was like, oh, like I settled into it. Like that was a peacefulness.
My gosh.
Luckily,
I don't know. You never told me that one.
No.
How long was that after Brianna was born?
like right away.
Like the first.
I would say like a couple of weeks after. And
Right.
it's just, it was so, it's hard to talk about because But then luckily, now I had a good support system. I had you, I had my family, I had everybody pushing me into therapy and doctors telling me like, oh, this is what it is. You know, I had psychiatric help, I had medication.
Right.
I had that, but it was so far gone at that point that thought came into my head and settled and was hanging out there. And that was the nice thought. I mean, that's my truth. There's no way else I can explain that.
Yeah,
I know it was just my brain lost its grip.
Yeah, I didn't know it was that far, I guess. For me, you know, again, I didn't know anything about this, so I apologize for anything I might have done wrong at that time.
We didn't know.
If I did.
I think a lot of partners don't know.
I just thought it was, hey, I'll try to get her to go out to dinner or make her feel better, my Scotty ways of doing things.
Yeah.
That's what at the time, I knew there was something going on, but, I'm like, oh, I'll tell some jokes. I'll get her out of it, I didn't know.
And you were working.
Right. I was working at I was working in Holland.
As a teacher at the school.
As a teacher, and that was like the worst for me. The first couple of years there, I was like, that was horrible for me working there. I didn't like it, so I was going through my own thing there. So, yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, I didn't know myself.
It was dark, and I think a lot of people struggle, and that's what I'm going to talk about with not having community. The other thing that happened was, I was looking back, I realized that that's when my gifts really cracked open.
Right.
And they had zero boundaries. It was kind of like letting a lion out of its cage and being like, go at it, because I was now I understand that a lot of things that was happening to me was my psychic gifts going haywire as well. I do credit that time with me. And again, this is my own personal story about it. I do credit that time with me really opening up that way. Okay. Any semblance of any barrier on anything I had was just gone. And I didn't know how to handle it at the time. So again, with me being because it is a chemical condition. Like I had postpartum depression and OCD, like with all that just combined, it wasn't really great.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. And again, maybe I never asked you. I don't even think I've asked you this ever before. Was there one day where it's just like, poof, you're back? Or, you know what I mean? Like, how did it end, I guess, for you?
Okay.
Or maybe you still have some remnants. I don't know.
I remember like around her second birthday,
okay,
I started feeling clearer. I remember starting to feel a little bit like my memories, and this is where my guilt still comes in, and it shouldn't, because like if somebody else told me this, I'd be like, please don't feel guilty. You know what I mean?
Right.
But a lot of the memories of that time, instead of being like joyful or, oh, this is wonderful, or I'm having such a wonderful time as a new mom, they're mostly just like fear-based and stressed and anxiety ridden. I feel terrible I gave that to my daughter, so these are my own personal things.
Right.
But around 2, I'm like, I remember having fun. Like, I remember being like, oh, wait a second, I'm having fun. No, wait, this is fun. I'm taking her somewhere. I'm not scared. Like, I was scared to go out with her. Yes. I felt like I couldn't protect her.
Yes.
This is just going to the grocery store.
Yeah, I remember that.
Like, I was like, what if somebody took her? What if somebody took me? What if I did that? Like I had all these phobias. So I remember around 2, like, they started to dissipate, and my memories of that time even kind of clear up and are more joyful.
Okay.
But yeah.
Now we waited a while for Abby. This was part of it, right? Anything with Abby, I don't recall this happening so much.
It didn't.
And not at all.
We were all prepared for it.
Right. I knew you had I know you had some anxiety issues, like the typical regular, the same thing that you were just talking about. I don't like you didn't want to leave the house a lot by yourself with Abby. I remember that. And which is totally valid. I mean, but so you didn't have it at all, right? Not, or very little.
It was such a different experience with my second child.
Yeah.
And that's when I started, when I was pregnant, seriously doing readings though, as well.
Yes, you were. Yeah.
That's when I was seriously doing readings. And I feel like that helped me a lot. I also was like oddly psychic about horse racing at that time, if you recall.
I do recall.
And I'm sure and then after I had her, it went away. Yeah. But when I was pregnant, I was like, I just knew which horse was going to win a race. And I'm married to somebody who likes horse racing. So it's kind of like, you were like, Megan, look at this. Yep. Who's winning? And I got the superfecta that year, which if you don't know what that is, I got the superfecta at the Kentucky Derby when American Pharoah won. And you didn't do the superfecta. I
did the triple.
We got the triple. But I was like, Scott, I had the superfecta. Like I had it written down on paper. Be like, that's the first 4. Which would have been, that's a regret. Yep. But anyways, I was like oddly psychic about horse racing.
Oh my God.
But I think because I was doing my readings and stuff, it exercised some of that anxiety and energy also. But I was prepared for it to happen.
Right. We were prepared.
Your parents were prepared. I told everyone, I'm like, hey guys, I might lose my marbles, I was telling them, but it didn't happen.
Maybe that helped it. Maybe being overly prepared.
I don't know.
I have no idea.
Honestly, I think sometimes with the brain chemicals, it's a roll of the dice. I really do feel that way. But for whatever reason, it didn't happen the second time. But for some people, it does.
Right.
But yeah, that's my own experience with it.
All right. So what we're hoping, if you are suffering from this now, or you know someone who has, or maybe in the future, this is for you today. This episode is for you. It's for any
partners, anyone. Yeah,
exactly. All right. So when we come back, you're gonna talk about postpartum depression and its links to spirituality.
I don't really need an alarm clock in the morning because I have my cat Binks waking me up around 6:15 a.m. in order to feed him his Smalls. This podcast is sponsored by Smalls. If you're a listener of the show, you know that my kitties cannot live without their Smalls. To get 50% off your first order plus free shipping, head to smalls.com and use our promo code KYA. Smalls cat food is protein-packed recipes made with preservative-free ingredients you'll find in your fridge, and it's delivered right to your door. That's why Cats.com named Smalls their best overall cat food. Making the change to Smalls cat food has changed their health for the better. My cats have way fewer hairballs, way more balanced energy, they're a healthier weight, soft and shiny fur, and a way less stinky litter box. I need my cat's approval. It's important for my self-worth. And because I feed them smalls, I feel like I'm getting more of their approval, which makes me feel better about myself. And if you're a cat person, that totally makes sense. What are you waiting for? Give your cat the food they deserve. Head to smalls.com and use promo code KYA at checkout for 50% off your first order plus free shipping. That's the best offer you'll find, but you have to use my code KYA for 50% off your first order. One last time, that's promo code KYA for 50% off your first order plus free shipping. Today, we are talking about postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety in a spiritual context from what I personally have seen in my readings, what it looks like in the aura, what I've noticed happens to people energetically, how it feels psychically, and also my own experience. So this is just coming from my point of view, as well as later on firsthand accounts from members of the Mystic Michaela spiritual family. So obviously, this is not medical advice and should not be taken as such. I'm not a medical professional, a mental health professional. I'm not an expert in those areas by any means. This is my own gathering of a different viewpoint. That's all, which is energy-based. I have the utmost respect for those who do have these roles in our society. They are the ones to be turned to and listened to. Listen, postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety are real conditions which need intervention and sometimes even medication. And there are people who can help you with that. And also, I'm really interested in what these professionals who are also members of the Mystic Michaela spiritual family have to say about this episode. All right, next piece of business before we get started. I really don't want to scare you. Like if you like want to have a baby, this isn't supposed to scare you. From my own point of view, I wouldn't be who I am today if it weren't for the experiences with my having babies. So not that it's the only way to shift and change and find yourself or whatever, but if it's something you want to do, have a baby, please don't let this episode deter you at all. Honestly, I feel like if I had somebody say what I'm about to say to everybody, before I went through my own experience with postpartum depression after having my first child, I'd be better off. Like I would have not as felt as alone, and I wouldn't have felt just confused. I would have felt way more confident with the changes that I experienced spiritually. And then finally, this isn't just for... Listen, I personally, I see these spiritual shifts happen, not just in people who have had a child, like birthed a child themselves through their own body. I have seen this with people who adopt as well. So understand that, through adoption, this can happen, through surrogacy, this can happen, and suffering pregnancy loss, this can happen too. So I just want to keep that open to your perspectives as well, from what I see in my readings. Okay, so let's get started. All right, here's the deal. I did a little research, okay, just a little bit, because 50 to 85% of new moms in industrialized nations, okay, experience baby blues, and 15 to 25%, and they think more than that, experience postpartum depression. Interesting. Okay. Why? I wanted to talk about our culture first a little bit. You could call it the culture of an industrialized nation. If there's a better word for that, feel free to let me know on the Facebook page. But the culture of, our westernized viewpoints towards things, I suppose, and postpartum depression, and how in other parts of the world and also in the past, more attention was given not only to the mother after giving birth, but also to the spiritual effects, as well as the mental, physical, and emotional, which are essential in combating postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. And in the study, I looked up the study, Stern and Krugman, in the study of postpartum depression in developing countries, they found that it was virtually non-existent. This is the research I did, super not extensive by any means. But definitely interesting to me as I talk about this today in relation to our energy and postpartum depression and anxiety, because here's the deal. Something's off. Something's off, and I feel like it's a spiritual thing. I'm going to talk about it. So this is what I see overall quickly in pregnancies, in readings, like in your energy field. All right. So let's say when you're pregnant, sometimes I can see your aura shift. If whatever aura color you are gets more extreme looking. So when you're yellow, you just get a little bit more yellow. When you're purple, you get more purple. You know, when you're indigo, you get more indigo. So it can kind of accentuate or amp up the extreme parts of you that you already have. So if you're somebody who already is a little bit anxious, it's going to go up. If you're somebody who's a little bit, organized, that's going to go up. If you're somebody who's a little angry, that might go up. Just in your energy colors. But here's the other thing. It also depends on the baby. Not to make it the baby's fault. Like, sometimes if you got sometimes I'll call them like a clinger, stage 5. Like, if you got one of those kids that's like going to be like, mommy, like they just are on you from the get-go, sometimes I'll see a lot more noticeable shifts in your energy because of your baby being kind of extra. And it doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes babies are just in there chilling, but when you're pregnant with kind of an extra baby, like a little extra, like a major personality, that can enhance what you're already going through. Because you're having an energetic conversation with a whole other little aura that's growing inside you. Different than yours. It's a little person in there, okay? A little energy with its own little spirit guides and its own little connection to the other side. And when they're a little stronger in their vibe, it can come through you as well. Now, after giving birth, usually I just see a lot of blue. Like, to sum it up, meaning and I'm going to talk about this, you have like 0 energetic boundaries. And I'm going to talk about that coming up, but a lot of blue. And no matter what your empath aura is, so blue, turquoise, purple, indigo, I see an increase in it. And then sometimes I'll see it get really thin or really spaced out, kind of airy. It's like spread thin is a good way to put it, but to your aura color. And I'll see like the amount of it is way more. So if you're normally yellow, blue, and you're used to leading yellow, usually after a baby, you're just way more blue. And even if you don't speak auras, you're like, yeah, I get that. Because not only are you exhausted and you're healing and all the things, you just in our society, the way that most of you experienced postpartum was you didn't have a ton of support. I'm sure you had some, but not as much as we're probably supposed to get, which I'll get into. My feeling is overall that the reason why our empath auras increase and get bigger and get really spread out and get very boundaryless, and why we lean on them, is our need to non-verbally connect with the baby, to energetically connect to the baby. That's in a nutshell. I also feel that pregnancy literally makes you into a portal of life, and you cannot walk away from that unscathed. You go through some sort of dimension and you come back and you aren't the same person. And in doing that, you lose some 3D skills, meaning you lose some boundaries and walls, foundations that you had in place beforehand to deal with the world the way it is. So you're feeling things more clearly. You are energetically way more vulnerable. Your empath aura is kind of fuzzy. And your ability to be here in this physical world the same way you were before has changed. And it takes time to adjust. And that adjustment period, it sure does depend. And what about the adjustment period? I just don't feel like in our Western culture, we have the support for the adjustment, which leads into the scarier stuff that can happen to us. I truly feel that this is what this period can lead us into postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, because we just aren't supported in our current culture, and it's just not spoken about in a spiritual way. And two things can be true. Of course, it's a diagnosed condition. I believe in that. I had it. I was diagnosed with it. Okay. I had multiple diagnoses with it. I had postpartum OCD. I had all sorts of panic attack disorder, generalized anxiety. I had all sorts of stuff. So, and those are chemical and those are real, and I needed actual intervention for that. But also, I feel like that it wouldn't have been as extreme, and I might have been able to lean into it more and deal with it better if our culture had a more spiritual approach to it, like other cultures do. So here's the deal. And I'm going to get into the psychic stuff. Trust me, because you definitely get some psychic skills when you're pregnant and after. Okay? You get some psychic skills when you have a baby, period. Even if you weren't pregnant, I see it with adoption moms and dads too. Like you get some psychic stuff happening to you. And I'm going to get into that. But here's the deal. Let's start here. When you have a baby in our culture, the pregnancy is given so much attention. Okay? There's like whole maternity stores and they're always selling you stuff and let's make the nursery, and you're treated really well by others. I mean, people hold doors for you. They give you baby showers. They think you're so cute, and you have like a doctor's appointment every other week. Everyone's really interested. They come in they come in, they're like, oh, how are you feeling? Let me help you. What's going on? They're so attentive. But then, okay, you have the baby, right? And then like 24, 48 hours later, you're out of the hospital. They're like, bye. And you're out there with this baby. They let it like a stranger, they stuck in your arms and they're like, keep it alive. There you go. And then you're just like, bye. And then like, see you at your postpartum appointment in 6 weeks. Good luck figuring everything out. And now you're just kind of the lady who had a baby in sweatpants and you're really leaky and you don't really feel great and you have no clue what to do. And even if you did have a better idea of what to do, you still don't always know. And you can feel bad about that, even though you shouldn't. And that is how we have babies here. That is how I had a baby. That's how everyone I know had a baby. That's like what happens. And what do you do for your friends? You tell them, this is normal. This is how you feel. Like you try to tell them like, you're okay. That is normal. This is okay. This too shall pass. You're going to be okay. You're going to get through it. You're going to get through it. That's kind of the big thing. Well, in other cultures, it's not just, you're going to get through it. It's like, oh my gosh, what a special time. And I'm going to get back to that, but there are so many spiritual things that happen when you have a baby. A lot of interesting psychic phenomena, which of course can be explained medically. All right. But it can be spiritual as well. Two things can be true the way I see it. I'm going to get into that more. But if you don't know this, you can totally think you're nuts and you can feel like you're a passenger in your own body and you don't know who's driving it anymore. You're just along for the ride. Like, oh my God, what's happening? That's what it feels like. And you can feel super alone. And then it snowballs. It gets worse. And that's what happened to me. And I'm sure it's what happened to many of you who've experienced that. And like I said, I'm going to get into the specific spiritual and psychic phenomena, but let's talk about how other people in the world avoid this. So in other countries, in developing nations, which we often are, they don't know what they're doing. Well, maybe they do. Okay. Like it's a whole perspective shift. And also in the past, again, a time when we're told, people didn't know as much. Well, maybe they knew some stuff we should have kept. There was a lot of community for the postpartum period. It was something that is labeled in some parts of the world as a distinct, important, valid, like time period. It's not something you got to get through. It's not something you got to like just, all right, suck it up, buttercup, through it. It's something that people validate you on, and it's something people are there for you. And you don't have to ask for it. They just do it. And our own past in colonial times, for example, it was called the lying in period, where new moms were in a sort of apprenticeship as they adjusted. And like people would just come over and family and friends and just neighbors and take care of your other children, you baby, more experienced as moms assisted you. I mean, and you laid there and recovered. I mean, and then you would go do that for somebody else, and that's just how it worked. Like it wasn't even something that you thought about. And also in other cultures and times, the mother received more protection because they're seen as more vulnerable. It's like they get the whole, your empath aura is like very spread thin. You're very energetically aware. Your boundaries are really thin right now. And this really lends itself to understanding that a spiritual shift has happened when you have a child, when you become a parent. I was reading about how, ritual bathing, washing of hair, binding of the abdomen, and all these things that women and caregivers and different rural communities do. And also loving ways some cultures continue to do this and just make the new mom feel okay and protected and assisted and honored and cherished and loved. And it's seen more as like this beautiful transition from pregnancy to postpartum. You know, something happened to you. It's not just, bye, see you in 6 weeks, you know, try to be okay. Breastfeeding, figure it out, bye. You know, it's like, no, come here, I got you. You know, it's like a big hug. So there's an acknowledgement that you've changed, which is a big deal when there's like a normalization, like, yeah, you've changed. The world looks different. You're going to feel funny. Everything that you're going through, we get it. We're with you. And the people are there to hold space for that. And also in a lot of other cultures, that you have a new role and a new status after birth is something we also don't do here. I actually read, like in Nepal, for example, I was reading that very little attention is given to pregnancy or at all. But after the baby's born, the community like totally engages in mothering the mother and their social rituals and gifts to honor their new role in life, and they're fed and cared for and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, a lot of stuff that we don't do. Like when we have babies, people aren't so interested in you anymore. You're like, oh, you were like that cute pregnant lady, and then, oh, baby's born. Bye. Now, have everyone in your hospital room right after. Entertain people. Everyone wants to come visit you and your new baby in your house. So make it clean. Make it look easy. This is a blessing. Be super happy. Okay? You're not allowed to complain. If you complain, you're not grateful. And on top of, so, you know, and also like, you know, that you're just have a lot of changes in your actual physical body, and you can feel kind of funny about that, and nobody's talking to you about it. And on top of all this, the psychic awareness, this raw, overpowering emotional state, which is actually very useful to speak to your baby's needs, it starts turning on you. Because you're told, oh, you're hysterical, you're emotional, you're hormonal, you're different, you've changed. You can just feel like you're a failure because you aren't enjoying your baby, your life. Well, of course you're not, because like you just went through something. You have very limited support. And I'm even talking about in the best circumstances. You know, in the best circumstances, it's probably not even enough support, because the way that we work, either you got a lot of money to pay for it, or you're just relying on you and your partner, or you and your mom, or you and your sister, or just somebody. You know, in other cultures, it's like, of course you're sleeping through the night for like 2 weeks. What are you talking about? You got to heal. Like, we have people for that. You know, like that is not something that the regular person gets here. So of course you're not enjoying things. You're not sleeping. You didn't shower today. Like, you're not eating right. Anyways, so many psychic phenomena I notice with new moms. Overall, just to reiterate, you are immediately stripped down to your soul self after birth. After like having a child, and again, after receiving a child. Any way you receive that child, you are stripped down. Because I do not want to discredit adoption moms and dads and adoption, because like I'm telling you, I see it the same way. I see it the same, like a lot of them are like, it hits them like a Mack truck. And they're like in it. They're in it to win it. Yeah, so there's this cracking that happens to you. Energetically, you're super energetically aware, you're vulnerable, like you crack. It's like a crack down to you. You're unabashedly psychic after you become a parent, and it is a lot to handle all at once. The point of being this way, you can feel your baby, you can understand what they need, you can communicate in a new way, you communicate energetically with your baby. You know, and even if you had a really hard time with your kiddo, you definitely were communicating energetically with them. My youngest had colic when I first had her. And looking back, like at the time in that, because I can take myself back to that mindset because she was my first child and she had colic. And that was bad. That's basically 3 months of somebody screaming constantly, unless I was vacuuming with her strapped to me. So I was vacuuming a lot. Anyways, at the time I was like, oh my God, she hates me. I'm not connecting. But then there was like a part of me, like a real quiet part of me that's like, she, you know, I understood her, and I looking back into, because I had postpartum depression at the time, but looking from now to myself and my mindset then, I was connected to her. I was getting what she was trying to communicate to me. I was meeting her needs. I was feeling her energy and being present for her. I didn't feel it at the time because it was just chaos, but looking back, I was. And you were too. So because a lot of you were saying in the thread I was reading, oh, I feel bad. I feel guilty. I feel like I didn't bond. I feel like I wasn't there. I feel like I was disassociated. It's like, trust me, you weren't. Because your energy, every time I see you guys with your auras and you're in there. It might be on kind of a robotic level that you're not understanding in the moment, but you'll come back to it in like 15 years and you're like, nah, I was just in a different way than was explained to me. Because you're told, it's like, oh, you have this baby, there's this magical moment. It's not always, magic doesn't always look the same for everyone. So that is the point of it. You're supposed to communicate in this new nonverbal, energetic way. The tough part of it is your identity is completely different. Like, you aren't the old you. That person left. That person got cracked open. The shell is cracked. A new you emerged from it. And it's very sudden and it's very disruptive. And everyone you know is like, who are you? Like, because it's like, it's you, but it's not quite you. Plus, once again, you're exhausted because we don't have that support. So a lot of people don't get it. I feel like a lot of the postpartum depression and anxiety we experience is a result of our bodies, our mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual bodies reacting to this change without the necessary support that we are supposed to get, which our ancestors understood we needed, and which cultures, which aren't the one in which our own healthcare system is set up, definitely do not understand. Like, our healthcare system itself energetically makes it very clear you aren't a human and you're not worthy of care and concern and that you didn't go through anything important, and just like the system itself, it's this cold feeling we get from it and we absorb it and we make it turn on ourselves. And then we believe we're worthless. And here's the thing, like, after you have a child, you are very aware that you have traveled dimensions. You are not who you were before this. It's a lot to handle. So just to kind of go through a lot of postpartum depressions, symptoms, like I said, I feel like, how do I put it? Again, I'm not a professional. Okay. So I'm just going to say it. The way that I see it, they are energy turned in on itself, energy turned upside down. So you can look at it in a couple different ways. I feel like it's a result of something spiritual, something energetic, something that needs more care, concern, and speaking to that has not been, and then your body starts talking for you. Then your mental health and your physical health start talking instead. And they're trying to tell you what's going on in order to get you to pay attention. But at that point, it's just, you need help. Like, it's too far gone because it's just like living in the bottom of a well. So postpartum depression symptoms may include, like, depressed mood swings, like crying a lot. You don't feel like you're bonding with the baby. You don't want to be around anybody. You're not really, you're eating too much or too little. You can't sleep or you can't stop sleeping. There's so lack of energy. Yeah. A lot of the stuff that I read that are symptoms, it's like, once you understand that our culture is basically telling you to do this to basically heal from this major event and this major identity switch without any support, a lot of these symptoms become like, no, duh. You're going to feel a lack of energy or hopelessness or worthlessness. Or, of course, you can't think clear. You're the only one thinking about everything all at once. Your brain's like hyper wired. Of course, you're going to have thoughts where you're restless or you have, emotions that don't turn off. And, thoughts about harming yourself, thoughts about harming the baby, recurring thoughts of death and suicide. I would venture to say these are way more common than are reported to the doctors because you're absolutely terrified that someone's going to take your kid away from you if you admit it. And that's the other thing. And once this stuff gets out, you're like, oh my gosh, everyone's going to think I'm a terrible mother. Everything's going to be terrible. So like just the social need to look like this is a breeze, like this is a walk in the park, can really hold you back. Let's talk about some psychic abilities I see amplified. Okay. Overall, you are getting a ton of psychic abilities amped up that you already had after you have a kid. And the purpose, again, is to communicate with the baby and because you've kind of gone through, I call it a dimension, like, which I'm going to get into. And because of that, like, you come out a lot more aware. Okay. So abilities I see get amplified are clairsentience. So that's the ability to feel other people's feelings as your own. Clairvoyance, your ability to see things with your third eye. And I'll go through these. Clairalience, which is like psychic smelling, clairaudience, psychic hearing, and your overall ability to know what's about to happen, no matter how inconsequential it may be. And that's important. So let's talk about some stuff that you might have experienced and been like, oh my God, that was so weird. But I didn't want to tell anybody about it because I thought I was crazy. Okay, you aren't. Phantom crying. To this day, I hear mama in the middle of the night, wakes me up. I swear to God, I heard it. Okay, like that. And nobody said it. Your psychic hearing is heightened. So I notice psychic stuff in general gets heightened when your physical body is already getting a lot more use. So when you're a mom, obviously you have to hear better. You're like, what's going on? What's that noise? Is the baby crying? Is the baby, what's that noise? What's that noise? Are they breathing right? Is that a raggedy breathe? You know, you're constantly like listening. You're using your ears a lot. And because you're so energetically attuned and open and vulnerable, it kind of amps it up and clicks it into the overdrive, the psychic hearing. So now you're going to start hearing things from different realms. Now you're going to start hearing things like white noise, or you're going to be hearing voices, now again, we have to be careful with this because postpartum psychosis is a big thing too. And if you're hearing stuff and you don't like what you're hearing, you got to talk to somebody. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if you're like, did I just hear my grandpa? Did I just hear my mom who died? Did I just hear my grandma? Like if you start hearing stuff like that and it's not anything that's causing you stress or concern, it's probably just your psychic hearing amped up. All right. And psychic smelling too. Like as a mom, I'm sorry, let's be honest. We can smell a dirty butt. Like I'm just going to say it. Like, you can. And you smell it all the time. Like when you have a baby, you're always like, what's that? And even when you all clean it up, you walk into a room, you're like, you smell your hand. You're like, oh God, clothes. You're like, you smell stuff nobody else smells. Again, when you're doing it that much with your actual physical senses, it's going to go into overdrive into psychic senses. So now you're going to be like, am I smelling grandpa's smoke from his pipe? Am I smelling grass in the middle of winter? It just amps it up to the psychic stuff. Am I smelling, perfume and there's no perfume here? All that kind of stuff. You're hearing the other side, you're smelling the other side, basically your body is ready to reconnect to the place that you touched during pregnancy or the place where your baby traveled through to get to you. It's another dimension. I mean, women who have babies have traveled dimensions. Babies travel dimensions. That's how I see it. It doesn't leave you without a mark. Okay. Like, when it's just, you touch where they come from. You grabbed them from somewhere on the other side and they came to you and everything changes. And part of that means that you can start hearing over there and more connected with them over there. And if that sounds nuts, I know, but that's how I see it. Also clairvoyance, like if you're already a visualizer, it can get really bad when you have postpartum depression. So if you're like me and you were constantly seeing awful stuff, so I won't even repeat it. Like just the stuff that would play like a movie in my head and cause me to just lay and just cry or like, stop it. Awful scenarios over and over, give you major anxiety. Now, the point of your clairvoyance, your ability to kind of see, is to be more aware of what your baby sees. okay, to connect with realms that we don't normally connect with, to visualize for their own safety even, that's what the clairvoyance is for. But again, when you're amping it up a lot and then you don't have a ton of support, it can turn on you, and it can turn into that like anxiety and that repetitive visuals and whatnot. That one got me the worst when I was, you can tell I'm even having a hard time talking about it because it still gets me to this day. And my oldest is 16 almost, and my youngest is almost 10. So that still sticks with me. Clairsentience, but I will say my clairvoyance got way better after I had a kid. Like my ability to see the other side, my ability to visualize what people look like, my ability to see things, my psychic seeing also amped up. So clairsentience, that's like feeling other people's feelings as your own. Listen, again, your energy is so aware. You can't deal with a lot of people in your space as much. The energy of others is suffocating because you're so open to your baby's energy, you can't turn it off when the grumpy in-law walks in the door. You're going to find yourself way choosier about who can come in, and it may not be polite on paper in our 3D world, in our Western culture. It may not be polite to feel the way you do about who comes over. But guess what? That's the way it is now. And what happens is they'll tell you that you're the problem, that you're rude, you're not who you used to be, you don't have coping mechanisms and whatnot. But in reality, you just had your walls stripped. In order to be a good mom, you need to keep them open, but you're not used to using them yet. So it's important to limit people around you who don't make you feel so great. And if you feel that way, it's because that's true and it's happening to you. But without like an advocate, helping you out, like you can imagine, okay, when we're talking about that community of women and like our ancestors had, or in other cultures where they still like embrace that, like there'd be a community of women, and the second they saw you annoyed about something, they'd be like, get out. There'd be like 3 ladies like, get out of her room. She's sleeping. It's her bath time. Go, leave. Like you'd have people saying this for you, and that, but now it's just like, oh, I can't say anything. I guess got to be polite. And another thing is, and this is my final one, your intuition. Okay. Some notices more when they're pregnant, but then it can disappear completely away, or you might feel like you have a heightened intuition forever, but it's definitely going to amp up forever after you have a kid. It's like mother's intuition, right? Knowing things, even things that you don't think are such a big deal to know, that's important. That's still your intuition heightening. Like little things like, I'm going to need an extra bottle, or I think I'm going to miss a nap today. Why do I think that? Or I need extra onesies, or I don't know, like weird little mom organizational skills for your intuition. That's, you can say, well, that's just me being a good mom. That's just me multitasking. Sure. But again, you're using it so much. Now you're getting other predictions. Now you know that your husband is going to run out of gas today. Now all of a sudden you know that some appointment you made tomorrow, it's going to cancel. Now all of a sudden you know that the birthday party for your sister-in-law isn't happening. Like, and then everything comes true. Or now like your best friend's going to call you on the phone, and you're there, you look down, she's calling you. You ask yourself, like, what's the point of this? Why did I know that? That's it. It's just your intuition is to the point where you're reading the energy just as easy as that you got to like pack an extra snack or plan for something for your kid. I hope that makes sense. Like the more you're in this repetitive multitasking mom role, what happens is your intuition opens up and you start knowing things about everyone, and you're not making it up. But man, it can make you anxious. And you can say like, oh, what's the point if it's so little or inconsequential? It's the point. Like your spirit guides are kind of helping you multitask, and you're picking up a lot of energy from like stuff. So it's like, listen, it can make you feel nuts. It can turn into anxiety, or you can start feeling like OCD. You can take it to an obsessive level of preparation. That's like when you, again, don't have the support or whatever, anybody to lean on. You can get phobias. But just again, when you're the only one dealing with this stuff, it goes haywire on ya. And I don't know if that's a solution, what I'm saying is, with all these things. Maybe it's a reason. And like I said, if I heard about all this stuff before my first baby, I might have not felt as completely out of it. I guess my point is if we were in a different culture of community, it really would help us a lot. I guess is my point. I mean, and I was reading about, I think people are getting it, I think people are getting it because I was reading about how postpartum doulas are a huge need right now. So postpartum doulas come in and their sole focus is taking care of the mom after birth and doing all the things that has been needed since the dawn of humans. Since the first woman had the first baby, they've been doing this stuff since the dawn of time, taking care of the mom too. So these postpartum doulas come in and they give all that to the mom. And so I feel like we're entering some sort of generation where we're like, we need something. We need something else. Like we need this. And a lot of you who I talk to, maybe it's just because people who get readings also might be the type that have home births, and I think it's great. Like people, I'm getting a doula, I'm having a home birth, and then I'm getting a postpartum doula. I think that's awesome if you can do that. I feel like I guess what I'm trying to say is, even if you don't have community just because of your circumstances, know that a lot of the stuff that might pop up after you become a parent is, from my end of it, from the way I see things, spiritually related. And when it goes unchecked or unhelped, just because life and it is what it is, it can turn into that real medical condition that I know I suffered. I know many of you suffered. And I just want you to know there's nothing wrong with you. It doesn't mean you're incapable. It doesn't mean that anything at all has happened other than you have become the best parent ever because you are so open. You're so open. You're even sacrificing your own sense of self to make sure that you meet your child's needs. No matter, and I feel like that's unfortunately what leads to this diagnosis. But at the same time, if this has happened to you, know that you really put all yourself into it. And that's a beautiful thing. As a parent, I don't need to tell you how busy you are. Our next partner makes mealtime for my kids much easier and way more enjoyable. This podcast is sponsored by Nurture Life. It is 2025. Are you still feeding your kids like it's 2005? Nurture Life is a meal delivery service focused on helping busy parents easily feed their babies and kids from 10 months old to 10 years old. This company provides fresh meals and snacks that are delicious, nutritious, and fully cooked. That means they're ready to serve in just 1 minute. Nurture Life lets kids enjoy a healthy, nutritionally balanced diet while still eating all their favorite foods like mac and cheese, spaghetti and meatballs, and much more, so parents can be sure there's always something on the menu their little ones will love. That's why Nurture Life is the top meal delivery service for babies and kids, and is even allergy friendly too. My kid's favorite meal from Nurture Life is the mini corn dogs. And let me tell you, they are delicious because I have had to sneak a few myself. That's how good they look and taste and smell. So how does Nurture Life work? It's simple. You select from over 50 varieties of nutritious, balanced meals on their weekly menu, from finger foods for babies and toddlers to kids' meals for older kids. Then Nurture Life does the cooking for you, and the fresh meals are delivered straight to your door in refrigerated packing. So what are you waiting for? Head to nurturelife.com and use code KYA for 55% off your first order. That's right, 55% off. Once again, that's nurturelife.com, and make sure you use my promo code KYA so they know I sent you. Even if you aren't a parent with young kids, but you know someone who is, make sure to share our code so our show gets the credit. We really appreciate that. Hey, Scotty.
Hey, guys. Okay, so over on the Mystic Michaela Spiritual Family page, you asked for people to share their experiences if they had them and they feel comfortable sharing with postpartum depression. And you asked some questions like, did it zap your energy? How did you feel that it tapped into your energy? Did you feel more or less connected spiritually? How did it play into your life plan journey? What lessons did you learn? Put in your aura colors. And we got a lot of responses to this, a lot of heartfelt responses as well. And I think you're going to read a few of these, and we'll go through them.
Okay, so Jacqueline O writes, Hi, fam. I'm here to say after my first, I suffered with postpartum depression terribly, also anxiety. I was having crazy rage and didn't want anyone but myself to take care of my son. I was probably the lowest vibe of my life. I couldn't connect spiritually at all, probably because of the depression. This was so extremely difficult because I was so spiritually connected while pregnant, speaking with my angels, having the most vivid dreams. I think we are the most psychic pregnant because we are literally moving a spirit earthside. It took me about 8 months to get back to me, and I feel truly connected again. I also learned how important it is to stay high vibe. The low vibe energy is zapping and so exhausting. I can't imagine someone who feels like that as a baseline or as a norm. I thought that was really interesting because I get what you're saying, like the disconnected from source, because when your brain takes over and you're that passenger and now your chemical biological body who's like trying, it's just so exhausted with everything you're going through. And then it just starts to just fire. All that ego stuff, all that body stuff can create a wall to that spiritual connection. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if it's intuition. I don't know if it's anxiety. Which one's which. I don't know if this is a fear or I don't know if this is a message. And then it messes with you because you already don't know what to do on the regular when you have a new kid, but you also now don't know how to tap into, your own source self or the place that you are used to going to find out answers or to feel truth or feel anything that's bigger than us. So that's very isolating in a spiritual way.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, the whole thing is terrifying. Because, truly, like, for people, that had that or are going to have a kid soon or just had their first kid, there's no booklet they give you. They just give you this. They give you a stranger. Being.
They're like, here it is. Don't kill it.
For myself, before that, I had a hard time taking care of a hamster, let alone a human. This is just me, I'm saying. But, then you throw that into the mix. Right. It's tough. Yeah, it's tough.
It's very tough. And I think just understanding that it's hard. Yeah. If I had known a lot of this before. Right. I think, and I probably still would have had postpartum depression, but I think I would have at least known there's a light at the end of this tunnel.
Right. Right. Which again might have played into why with Abby, maybe it wasn't.
Correct.
Possibly. Okay.
Possibly. So Kara A writes, postpartum depression following my daughter's stillbirth last year was the hardest experience of my life. It is hard to describe because I was obviously grieving her loss, but there were also other feelings there too. I felt my empathetic nature was amplified, but I had a wall up and couldn't always act on my desire to help others, which often sent me into a spiral. Another interesting take, I'm indigo and thrive when alone, but I had the hardest time being by myself postpartum. It took me months to be able to go run errands by myself again. I'm still navigating this journey, but I'm coming out of the other side and I do feel more connected spiritually. I was forced to slow down and learn not to take anything for granted. As a purple, I trust my intuition now more than ever. I have learned to see the absolute beauty and majesty in the smallest of things, like the wind blowing, the smell of pine trees, a ladybug, etc. I just wanted to share her story because having a stillbirth and these feelings still came in. I just feel for her. And also just on the medium side of things, when I feel like moms who hold their babies for a little bit of time are such beautiful mothers. And anybody that's done that, miscarriage or stillbirth or, it's like I don't know how else to explain this. It's in a reading, it feels like you gave that baby so much of yourself, so much of whatever that baby needed. You were a beautiful and loving and giving mother. For whatever reason why that baby was earthside such a short time, what you gave that baby was all and everything. And just the selfless nature of love that is the exchange between mother and child. I just want to tell anybody that's gone through that it's a beautiful thing. And you did a beautiful job as a mother, and you still are by honoring them and those lingering feelings that happen. It's a grieving process that you deserve and you're allowed to have. So I just wanted to thank Kara for sharing that story, because I think it speaks to a lot of people who feel like they can't mention that they've had these postpartum depression if they don't have the physical baby with them too. Right. Wow. Okay, Aaron S. writes, I struggled so much with postpartum anxiety with my first. I'm purple yellow and really felt my yellow totally took over and fixated on sleep schedules and all the rules of how things are supposed to be done. Lots of intrusive thoughts about scary things happening to my son and how scary the world can be. I totally hear that. I always have been a pretty hopeful person, and suddenly I felt like I brought a child in such a horrifying world. I spiraled about things like climate change and the future. Yeah. I really felt disconnected from my purple. It evolved into a really physical anxiety symptoms like blurry vision, vertigo, panic attacks, racing heart. I also felt lots of rage and let it out on my husband. Then I would feel so guilty after. Therapy and medication, I eventually tapered off, help immensely. I'm postpartum with my daughter now. And so far, having a much better time. I noticed many of the same tendencies and feelings surfacing, but I've done so much awareness around it and tools to help. I'm able to talk to it all much better with my husband and go to therapy regularly. So it feels good having that support system in place. I feel much more connected to my true self this time. It's been very healing.
Yeah, I think that last line or two was key with the support system.
Yeah.
And, I'll just speak for myself, and then if the reds and the greens here want to take something from it, the red and green men.
The men.
Yeah, I think it's something that if, again, we don't feel this. So
right.
Like, I never at any point felt this. I did a few times feel like, bringing like a kid into this world. I've had those thoughts before, like how horrible that is. And I'm doing this sometimes. Like, I get that. I felt that before too, but then it goes away, it's a fleeting thought. But yes, for us reds and green guys out there, maybe even the yellow guys, just give the support. I mean, I think if I would have, and I hopefully I did that, and if I know I'm making it about myself now, but if I could go back to that time when Bree was born, I think that's the number one key. Even if you don't understand it, or you're like, what is this? This makes no sense. Everything seems fine. You just had a baby. You should be overjoyed. You should be living your best life at this moment in time. Yeah. Just get that it's a thing, and just be supportive. And that would be my advice.
Well, it's good advice
for us guys.
Yeah, because just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's not happening.
Right, exactly. I still don't understand it.
But I'm going to be honest with you,
Scott,
that
doesn't mean it's not happening.
It's not just the men. Honestly, a lot of men, I think, are doing that. They're like, okay, and not everyone's different, but I would say in general, a lot of women do this we do this to each other.
Oh.
Honestly, like how I see it too, like other women in your family or, people just say things
like
to you.
Snap out of it or something.
Like I was on my feet the day after I had my kid. Why aren't you on your feet? Or, my kid was sleeping through the night. What's going on with you? Like you need to put them down. You need to do this. You need to like whatever it is. Like, I think we do it a lot to each other. I don't think we do it in the MMSF, but I do feel like out there, if you've had a kid, you've had somebody be like, and you're like, okay, so everybody has to understand, but we don't. And that's what I did my whole spiel about earlier.
Okay.
But that's good. Yeah. Even if you don't get it, it's a thing.
Yeah. And that would be my advice to new dads.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's good. That's important.
Men listening. Yeah.
All right. So Rajal S says, I was very young for me when I had my son, a very fresh 23 years old, and I didn't know what was happening. But I had an idea that the hollowness was, quote, normal, but I had no media like my algorithm today to explain it or take the edge off. I was desperate to get back outside again and get back to work and, quote, be myself again, quote. Felt like a caged dog on my worst day. It's easy to think back and just want to hug that poor young girl who just didn't know what her brain was doing. In retrospect, it's very easy to see what was, quote, wrong. And I just wish I could have explained it to myself. Oh, everything she's saying, I'm like, yes. I feel like I had never been so disconnected from source, but was simultaneously doing exactly what I should have through long turns of events kicked off by baby blues. And over the course of 2 to 3 years, I got divorced and dove headlong into work in a way that I now see had been calling me for ages. So she had a breakthrough. I will say the blues are the one thing that make me nervous about ever having a second. And I also know no matter what, I'll handle it better with this context. I just thought that was very honest.
Yeah.
It was like and I think another thing is, and that's why I love this thread, by the way, because we have such an amazing Facebook group, and just reading through this thread, people say it. They say the thing because it is so scary to say a lot of this stuff because you're going to feel like, is somebody going to think I didn't love my kid? Or somebody going to think I wasn't a good mom? Or somebody think I'm selfish? Or somebody going to think I'm extra or over the top or mean or whatever. And it's like, no, you're not. You're a person, and it's okay to feel any way that you feel is valid. So I just loved Rajal's take on that.
Oh.
Yeah. All right, last one. Jamie L. says, our youngest of 5 is adopted, and I struggled with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. I did not realize that's what it is until recently, almost 3 years later, as I still struggle with the anxiety. She was also born with a neurological condition that added the layers of depression and anxiety. I'd never had bouts of either until the fears of being good enough for her or intrusive thoughts of forgetting her or dropping her or falling on her. Oh my God, that's a thing. Like, what if my arms don't work? I had that too. Or what if my marriage fell apart and her family had trusted her with us? Maybe they made the wrong decision. Or maybe I could never be good enough to properly navigate her surgeries, etc. I felt like the layers of loving her and tending to her left me almost paralyzed and for sure never the same. It's traumatizing and has left a bit of residue on my life's lens. In some ways, I'm closer and deeper to spirit because the depths of my being that I've had to find and the new parts of myself that are being revealed. I've become more available to the flow of the universe and surrendering since I realize more than ever, I am not in control. And I want to bring that up because you can have this when you adopt too. You know, like it's just bringing in life, it's nurturing life, all the things that come with that and how our body reacts. And also if we don't have that support system, which I already said in our culture, we just don't have in order to do it in a way that, you know, doesn't make you feel like you're going to really mess up something big. Yeah. I really appreciate everybody sharing. It is really powerful. Our group, I highly recommend everyone in our group go read that thread. You will not feel alone, tell you that much. And I'm just so thankful for everybody sharing today.
Yeah. And I just want to say one thing, and I know this, when you have something like this, probably means nothing, but you are the most incredible mother to these 2 kids.
Oh, thank you, Scotty. Oh, I love you. Thank you. All right. This podcast is for you and about you. And I'm so glad you spent some time with us today.
Hello, podcast fans. If you're looking for a new podcast, if you enjoy articles, books, pop culture, and hilarity, try listening to the Brain Candy Podcast.
That's right. The Brain Candy Podcast has over 500 episodes of educational hilarity to satiate your learning needs. Just search for the Brain Candy Podcast on your podcast app or click the link in the show notes.